everybody? Welcome back to the All Things Entertainment podcast. We're going to continue along with the subjective versus objective, and we're going to go ahead and talk about a little bit more recent entertainment. And one thing I'd like to start off with is the fact that cancel culture seems to really be a struggle between objective and subjective most of the time. You've got people posting content, you've got people viewing the content, and then posting their subjective truths versus actually looking at what was objectively done by the person who actually did the post. Tabloids seem to constantly inundate the public with subjective truths all the time. And the question I want to ask each of us is there a responsibility to compare and contrast what is objective and what is subjective?
Yeah, so we were talking about kind of the fake news thing. If you think about it, the idea of subjective is kind of whatever you want. And I think, first of all, yes, we do have a responsibility. It's the whole idea that, yes, technically, if you're a publication, you can print whatever you want. And that's why they're opinion pieces, right? They're op-eds. But the problem is a lot of news sources now are literally just printing false information. And I mean, that happened, but not in the grand scale of the way that it is now. Like before, it was like local newspapers and stuff like that, right? Back before we had the internet. But now, because of where we're at, we actually have evidence of news sources and media sources that are literally just, if they're not verifying their sources and they're just putting whatever is going to fit their agenda, or even worse, there are actual evidence of certain news sources and media companies that have perpetuated actual falsities and lies that aren't true, and they know they're not true. And yeah, we totally have that. I mean, if you think about the way that we learn now, we learn from news sources and media companies. And so, if that's the case, then they're totally obliged to, or what's the word?
Obligated.
Yeah, they're obligated to produce the truth. And I think that's why more and more, like CNN has lost, more viewership than it's ever before. There's so many mainstream media companies out there that have lost viewership because more people are going, I'm not listening to this because this is false. I'm going to go to YouTube and actually look up sources. And sometimes people look at the bad sources, but there are a lot of good sources of people who the left will try and ostracize, and they'll call them racists or bigots or whatever. Like my favorite is when they call Ben Shapiro an anti-Semite or, white supremacist. It's like, he's a Jew. Like he was one of the biggest targeted, I think it was 2016. He was the most targeted figure of the white supremacist movement, the actual white supremacist movement, right? And so people are going to those sources who have been proven to actually be somewhat objective, right? Like they admit that there are biases that they have, but they try to just tell the truth. Steven Crowder is another great example, right? His channel has blown up because of that. And now you're looking at, like, I don't know if you guys know, but like the quartering is a big one that is blown up over that. There's a couple people that they just produce objective truth or objective news. And I think that's why people are starting to go to YouTube, because they're looking for actual truth now.
Yeah, but unfortunately, because of cancel culture, people on YouTube are being canceled as well. Like Patrick Coffin just got canceled recently. Stefan Molyneux got canceled, I think, a few months ago. I think Steven Crowder actually got kicked off as well recently, or maybe he was just suspended for a bit. I have to check into that.
He was suspended for, I think, 7 days, which is funny because when they suspended him, they literally did not list the reason. And like if there's anybody who's listening to this who has followed that, first of all, if you have it, I would encourage you to follow it because it's, first of all, funny, but it's fascinating. But their lawyer, Bill Richman, is going after big social media companies. They're tired of them just going to Congress and Congress just giving them a pass and not doing anything. They just give them a little slap on the wrist. So Bill Richman is like literally going after these social media companies and suing them for a numerous amount. But even Tim is afraid of being canceled now. Like
yeah,
I may be gone.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, Tim Pool been very, in the center, like very balanced, I think.
Totally.
But they can't have that. It has to be our way, our agenda, our ideology, or hit the road. Mm-hmm. There's no in this culture, and this is one of the things I think is really dangerous in this culture. It's very much a 1984 scenario where if you have a difference of opinion, goodbye. You can't, there can't be dialogue. There can't be agree to disagree. I remember growing up, here's that, you can have an opinion, but you should be able to agree to disagree, and that's fine. But in today's environment, no. If the higher ups don't like what you have to say, well, goodbye to your freedom of speech. You have to think the way that we think, or you have to reiterate our ideologies and be on the same, regardless of your religious or political or personal views. I mean, it's so ridiculous that they have this whole cancel culture thing that doesn't allow people really to have freedom of speech. It's unbelievable. To be able to say what they think or what they feel, or to even have a discussion about it and agree to disagree. Mm-hmm. But no, it's become a totalitarian society when it comes to those who are in power and have social media and the ability to take your voice away from these in a sense public forums. And that's really it's unnerving because it's really very much a 1984 scenario where if you have a different opinion, you're ostracized or kicked out, canceled. That's basically what's happening.
Yeah, and it's hard too because if you think about it, we talked about this on one of the episodes, is that we have separate medias now, where you have like left media and the people are getting canceled, like Gina Carano is a great example, is now going over to what is going to become kind of the I guess you could call it right media or conservative media. But that's not, we shouldn't have that. Like as much as unfortunately we're having to do that, which I'm like, hey, bring it on. Keep canceling great actors I enjoy and keep bringing them over because we'll gladly take them. We'll put them in our movies, right? We'll do all that. But it sucks because it shouldn't be that way. We don't want a division because as soon as there's that division, now it becomes kind of an echo chamber thing. And that's not good.
Yeah, I agree with that in some ways, but I get the echo chamber thing, but if it's an echo chamber of truth, then hopefully people will be able to discern, this, if I want something that where people are going to talk honestly and not push something on me or down my throat, or everybody has to, talk the same way, speak the same way, and, have the same lingo and same ideology. That's what you call a cult.
Yeah.
So I think that, people are going to have to see that what they're trying to make is a cultish society where you have to acquiesce to their political or philosophical assertions, and they're trying to jam it down our throats and our minds instead of actually being able to have a honest conversation where we get to say, you say what you think, I say what I think. We actually get down to the bottom of it. Maybe we, at the end of it, we agree to disagree, but we can live in harmony, But that's the thing. They don't want that anymore. They don't want that. They want to control minds and hearts and push their agendas. And it's very, very clear, and it's very frustrating because it's like I wish more people could wake up and see this and see what they're trying to do, because it's about control and power and money, and that's really the heart of it. And if it doesn't float their political agendas or what they think and their ideologies, and it comes down to Marxism. It comes down straight to Marxism. Different organizations have promoted it, and they believe in, in socialism and communism, and they want America to be that. Now, I know that's people saying, well, you're wearing the tinfoil hat. No, it's very, very, very true. Everything that they pushed, okay, when it comes to different policies politically or different beliefs, philosophically and ideological, is socialism and communism, and I don't like that. I don't want to. I've seen that we've seen that too many times. It's the same playbook. It's the same thing in Venezuela, the same thing, in all these different countries that we've seen over the last century that have caused over 100 million deaths.
Yep.
And
been implemented. It's never succeeded. And people are like, well, what about Sweden and Norway? They themselves say, do not refer to us as a socialist nation. We are not socialist. We're, if anything, we're democratic. And it's so funny because everyone's like, oh, they've done it. It's where socialism is done well. And it's like they themselves are like, no, we are not socialists. Do not lump us in with those psychopaths.
Yeah. So I think the problem is that socialism always leads to communism. It's a given. And
on your point of cult-like behavior, what's crazy is, before it was kind of secretive, but now we are seeing literally the worship of gods. Like Satanism has now become more popular, and like with the whole thing with Nas X, right? Lil Nas X or whatever it is. Now he has these Satanist shoes, Yeah. And you have that new policy that they're trying to push for the education system, where literally children will have to chant to gods. So you not only have a cultic-like behavior, but now we have actual worship of pagan gods in our culture.
What, you mean in the school system, like in public school?
Yeah, you haven't seen this yet? It's pretty insane.
You told me that they take out, prayer from public school, and then they're going to put in chants to like random gods or whatever.
Gods, Aztec gods that are actually gods of human sacrifice. It's pretty crazy. They're actually pushing this, and a part of what?
I haven't heard about this. That's very bizarre.
Look it up, man. When I heard it, I was like, it can't be true. It's fully true. They're trying to implement a bill that will go into play, that they are working on I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's a part of the education system that's like religious studies and that kind of stuff. And their whole idea is to break the foundation of what we believe as the United States, the way that it was started. And, to, of course, break that the United States was started by white supremacists and, European settlers who, killed and did all this horrible stuff that they say that they did, which actually, if you look at the history, they didn't. But what's crazy is a part of the curriculum requires the students to do a chant to these various gods. And it actually has like what they chant in it. And one of the gods is, I can't remember what god it is, but it's the Aztec god. And it's a god that Aztecs would regularly sacrifice, perform human sacrifices to them. This is real.
Wow.
Yeah, schools have, they've tried to get rid of, I think it was in New York, they introduced something into the education system where they tried to get rid of mommy and daddy. So kids don't call mom or dad either of those titles anymore. And it's getting to the point where it's ridiculous. Like, get out of our schools. I
think the problem, that's one of the problems, is that we've been told that, kids need to go to public school because that's where they need an education and whatnot. But if you look at the curriculum and stuff that they're learning in public schools, it's really a load of garbage for 12 years. There's really nothing that you learn in public school that you can really take into real life and do something with. I don't agree with their system. I think that, learning some basic things, that's important, some basic math. But honestly, I think if you learn, math, and then you read a lot of really good books, classic books, and you actually, I like what Mark Twain said. He said, never let school get in the way of your education.
Yeah, I love that.
So it's like, I know people who, didn't go to college or they dropped out of college and they're much better off because of it, because they didn't waste their time. And this is the thing about, the education system that really bothers me. School, high school, K through 12, what does it prepare you for? It kind of prepares you a little bit for college, but what does college prepare you for? It doesn't really prepare you for, a job. Nope. What does it prepare you to do? It prepares you to be a worker, to be a slave, and so you have all this, K through 12, which is kind of like Honestly, I see it as glorified babysitting. And then I see colleges, honestly, most four-year colleges as glorified high school. If you were to actually just learn something from a young age, you learn a trade, you learn some type of skill, you'd be much better off. I don't think that, K through 12 really helps you in any real meaningful way. I think it's a horrible environment because you're spending all your time with, let's be honest, teachers who, aren't paid enough, and they're just there because it fits their lifestyle or it's convenient or it's, what they could do. But these aren't top rated teachers who are doing a great job. And so you have mediocre education for years and they're not actually preparing you for life. So it only prepares you it doesn't prepare you to, start your own business or be an entrepreneur or innovate or doing all these different things that are important for our society to grow and to get better. It's preparing slaves.
And what our country is founded on, free enterprise, right? I was just adding to you what you said. Like, we are the only country in the world that does not teach its economic system. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Yeah.
In the world.
It's unbelievable.
All right, guys. So we got a little bit off topic, but I like it.
Real quick, sorry, before we move on, I did want to say, look it up. It is actually real. Like, all I can find is American Thinker. And if people who want to hear this be like, oh, that's a right, or, a right site or whatever it is. But it is true. If you look up the sources, it's the California Department of Education. It's a ethnic studies model. And it includes a ton of things. And one of them is chanting the names of Aztec gods, as well as an actual chant, like calling for the gods. It's pretty crazy.
That's horrific.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to say one last thing on that, where you were talking about watering down of schools. What's so funny is I was literally just talking to somebody about this. I don't know if it was you, Trevor, it was somebody, but I was saying, if you think about it, it's the analogy of when you have a cup of Coke, like at the movie theater or something like that, right? You have ice and the Coke, and the cup is mostly Coke, right? The ice melts though, and it introduces water to the Coca-Cola. And as you drink the Coca-Cola, the water dilutes the Coke. So by the end you have maybe a third Coke, the rest of it is water. And it was like, that's the education system. If you think about it, we've been diluting it for years by making these ridiculous things like Klingon, being able to, get a language studies degree from learning a language that does not exist other than in TV shows and stuff like that, right? And all of these like bogus social studies degrees that don't do anything. And we watered down the education system and also teach.
Well, it's genius, because if people rack up student loans, then they have to go and get a job, which means they have to go work for corporate, which means big businesses keep making good money and off of our labor, off of our backs, and we can never get ahead. Never start our own business because we're stuck with all this debt. Yeah. And so it doesn't prepare you for if you have all these horrible studies that actually don't prepare you for life. They're laughing because, oh, look at another person stuck with $150,000, $200,000 worth of loans. I mean, if you go to USC, maybe you have a million or more, and then you're stuck working for some corporate person, some corporate job. Working and making a CEO millions and billions, while you're running your life away, and living for the weekends or a few weeks vacation every year, killing yourself.
Well, and student loan debt is the only debt you can't declare bankruptcy on.
Exactly. So you're creating slaves. You're literally creating slaves.
Well, Sean, you're aware of this, the Prussian system, right? That's what our education system is based on, which literally the definition of their system was to create mindless slaves that will follow orders without asking question. That's what our education system is based on.
Well, that actually is a perfect. That's a perfect definition.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I feel weird going on to our next topic now. That was pretty heavy.
No.
But, all right. So Princess Meghan and Prince Harry recently were premiered on Oprah's interview show. Did either of you guys see that?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, Will did. Both Meghan and Harry seemed to suggest that the subjective was focused on more than the objective, and this greatly affected them. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, when you say the subjective, like, what do you mean by that? Because obviously they didn't say that specifically. Like, what do you mean?
Well, for example, there was a situation where tabloids or news was publishing things saying that Princess Meghan freaked out and like made somebody else cry. But in the interview, she said it was the opposite.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that I don't remember that example per se, but I do remember them just crapping on the royal family, which is messed up. And I mean, whether something happened or not, like for a great example, right, is when she said the whole idea that somebody of the royal family asked her if the baby was going to be black or was going to be white. And she made it seem like this was this super racist thing. And I can't remember who it was who was talking about it, but was saying, you know, if you think about it, like, that's not that bad. If you were talking with a friend or something and you're like, oh, you know, just curious, like, I don't know. I can't remember exactly what he said, but the way that she made it sound like this horrendous thing. Like the royal family was the most racist, right? Even more racist than Donald Trump, right? It was like this horrible family that's racist and all this kind of stuff like that. And most of what I've heard is totally bogus.
You know, this is what I want to say earlier when we were talking about media and different outlets saying one thing when it's the other thing, and the whole subjective versus objective. It seems to me that what they're doing is just a lot of propaganda. Mm-hmm. It's just outright propaganda. Now, I'm not really sure with the whole royal family stuff, but I just know that they do this in media all the time. And going back to what we were talking about, you know, different news outlets, they'll take a quote out of context. They will cut up a video of somebody and only use a few sentences to try to make their point, and then insinuate that they meant something else. When if you watch the whole thing, you obviously know that it's completely out of context, or they meant something totally different, or they're giving example. I'll give you one example. One was Candace Owens. And they said Candace Owens was their point, and they showed a small part of a clip that she had given. They were saying that she was somehow promoting Hitler as though Hitler was good. And when she went back and explained it, if you go back and watch the video, she was not saying Hitler's good. She was giving an example of something. And so this is their tactics. They will take anything you say and make you look bad and twist your words and do a cut-up job, because they don't like that you are going against their ideologies. And they don't care. They don't care if it's a lie. They don't care if it's disingenuous, because that's the mindset that they are operating from.
Yeah.
What they care about is manipulation. It's manipulation and propaganda. And I don't care, you know, if anybody comes back and calls me, you know, whatever. It's the truth. And so there's your objective sort of. There's the difference between objective and subjective. Subjective is how you see things. Objective is what actually is. So the objective truth is that they are doing cut-up jobs that are disingenuous, that are painting people out to be something that they're not, yep. And twisting words and saying, look at and doing really manipulative things, like saying, if you don't stand with us, then you're against us, right? Certain things like that. Or if you believe this, or if you voted for this person, or if you did that, well, then you are the problem. You're the enemy. And it's this polarizing, cultish tactic that is not only disgusting, but absolutely infuriating and horrifying, because what they're trying to do is divide the country. And that's one of the problems. The problems is that when you have people who are radicals, these radical people in high places of power who want to push their agendas, their philosophy, their ideologies, and they're toxic, and they're the same garbage that we've seen throughout the last century that's caused millions of people's deaths. Hitler, Mao, Stalin, the Bolshevik Revolution, you name it, communism, Marxism. I'm not for it, and I don't care. So if anybody's watching this, do your due diligence on what they're actually trying to push on us in the media, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to weaken us, and they're trying to divide us, and then trying to make one side of it, those who are on one side of it, look like the enemy. When, the truth is not every conservative is good. Not every, liberal is bad. I'm just saying that when it comes to it, the things that we stand for, at least the things that we say we stand for, because none of us are perfect, but the things that we want to stand for are the things that make our society, have always made our society good, which is freedom, liberty, freedom of speech, the right to protect ourselves, all these different things, the values that we've held as a country. Now, of course, we're not always perfect. We make mistakes. But, the thing is that we tried to correct all those, through our country. And we paid lives. We paid lives so that we can have liberty and freedom of speech. Yeah. So, and to protect others and give people freedom from things like slavery. So regardless of the past and different generations, this generation, we can do something great. And that's to stand for love and unity and protecting those who need it, and standing up against totalitarian, narcissistic, power-hungry Marxists and socialists. We can't let this happen in our country.
Yeah, it's totally un-American. And I couldn't agree with you more. It's nothing but mind games, and unfortunately, just this type of stuff can happen in communism, it can happen in socialism, and it can happen in capitalism. Sure. Capitalism isn't perfect, but because certain people rise
will always find a way.
Yeah, exactly. They rise to a certain level of power, and that's just what happens.
The companies you're talking about it can happen in capitalism. The ABC companies are a result of capitalism. Right? If you think about the controllers of, because the thing Steven Crowder says is that you have these what is it, 5 companies or whatever it is, Google, Apple, Facebook, and Twitter, who literally have more power than any regime that has existed in history because of their political affiliations, because they're able to silence people, because they're able to cancel people in that way. And, something I wanted to bring up, Sean, when you were talking about the media, them just manipulating things. A great example is Ron DeSantis, right? Ron DeSantis has been in the media a lot, the Floridian governor. And the reason is because of his plan to roll out the vaccinations. And what happened was they did a 60-minute special on him and everything like that. Now, the truth of it is that Ron DeSantis, as well as everybody who was a part of that coalition and that plan, met with CVS, they met with Walmart, they met with Publix was one of the companies they met with, and there was a couple other companies that they met with to create a plan to roll out the vaccinations. Well, 60 Minutes did a coverage of his questioning, and they threw out this bogus thing that all they were doing was putting the vaccinations in Publix, which is a higher end store, so that only wealthy white people could get the vaccinations, and that, the minority would not be able to get it, right? It was like, oh, you're only sending it to that. When in reality, he met with all of these companies, but they had edited the 60 Minutes so that it looked like not only was he attacking the woman because he was saying that's ridiculous because he told her, he said, I'm not going to stand here and listen to you say this. I've already answered the question. If you do that, you can see all the information that's out there. They had edited it to make it look like he was yelling at her.